Under 233, the nays are 175. The bill is passed without objection. A motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For purposes, the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, September 25th, 2012.
Without objection.
Chair will entertain requests for 1 minute. What purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, so the gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have heard from many Texas business owners who built their own business without government help. Here's what Pam from Liberty, Texas has to say. We are college-educated taxpayers who have a lifetime of hard work under our belts. We have stayed up at nights trying to figure out how we're going to pay our taxes, insurance, employees, and our bank notes. We started from scratch, owning convenience stores, car washes, many storage businesses, a clothing business, and also operated and owned 2 small-town movie theaters that were built by my husband's grandparents and parents. The latest is a real estate business. There's not much that anyone can tell us about the sacrifices that have to be made when you start up your own business. We have done it all, including working full-time jobs for someone else to make ends meet. No government agency has ever helped us with one thing, but the government certainly has made our work harder and more expensive to run and operate our businesses. Mr. Speaker, people, not the government, make America's businesses successful, and that's just the way it is.
Gentleman yields. For what purpose does the gentleman from Connecticut rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of my constituents wrote very emphatically, how could Congress possibly leave when they know that we, the people, face the deep, dark abyss of uncertainty. Uncertainty about our unemployment, uncertainty about the jobs that we need, the uncertainty that comes when your mortgage is underwater, the uncertainty that comes when you know you have to educate your children, and yet Congress leaves without addressing the basic needs of the people that we're sworn to serve. For the last week, we've heard an awful lot about work requirements. The primary work requirement that should be asked is of this United States Congress, for it to stay and do the work of the people. There is a jobs bill that's out there. There is a tax cuts that can be achieved. Let's stay and do that work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today on behalf of the men and women who have worked tirelessly to make Indiana the best place to do business in the Midwest. Coal produces the electricity that powers everything from manufacturing mainstays to small business startups. Mr. Speaker, coal-fired electric power plants provide 83% of Indiana's net electricity generation in 2011. Rising energy prices are squeezing small businesses, entrepreneurs, and families. Unfortunately, President Obama's EPA has waged a war on coal. Unelected bureaucrats have proposed a series of sweeping regulations that would destroy jobs and decrease domestic energy production. As a result of Washington's overregulation, the Energy Information Administration expects the pace of coal-fired power plant shutdowns to increase fourfold in the next 5 years. Today, we've had an opportunity to stand up for the American coal industry and the families and businesses that rely on the electricity they provide. We can ensure that regulations are sensible and not overbearing. We can make sure that coal keeps lighting homes, stores, and factories in Indiana. With that, I'll yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. What purpose does the gentlelady from Tennessee or from Oregon seek recognition? What purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to take this moment to congratulate a high school in my district, the Hollis F. Price Middle School, or College, for receiving the U.S. News and World Report bronze recognition as one of 2012's best high schools in the country. U.S. News and World Report ranked nearly 22,000 public high schools across the country, and I'm proud that one of the Memphis City schools was recognized. This school was named after the fourth president of Lemoyne-Owen College, an historically black college and university in Memphis. Hollis Price is a collaborative effort between Memphis City Schools and Lemoyne-Owen to improve graduation rates and provide accessibility for students to attend college. I want to commend Principal Daphne Beasley, all the faculty and the staff for their hard work and dedication, and surely the students I want to congratulate too, and their parents on this great achievement. I was proud to speak at their graduation a few years ago. It's a great school. Continue to make Memphis proud. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From day one, my focus in Congress has been on jobs and the economy. I believe that the best thing Congress can do is to find common ground to move our country forward. This week, I'm happy to say we did just that. On Wednesday evening, the House of Representatives passed a bipartisan jobs bill which I am pleased to say I champion, and which would encourage global investment here in our country. This means jobs in our local communities. Companies in the 10th District like Estellas and Takeda and Siemens are able to invest here in America and put people to work. This bill passed with broad bipartisan support, and I certainly want to thank Representatives Roscom, Peters, and Barrow for reaching across the aisle and coming together and helping to pass a common-sense bill that encourages business to grow right here at home. I firmly believe, Mr. Speaker, that when we put people before politics and progress before partisanship, we can get things done for the American people.
Time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I took to this floor to discuss the brave dissidents inside Cuba that went on a hunger strike to protest the jailing of one of their own. The end of that hunger strike came this week when the Castro dictatorship announced the pending release of that dissident. This was a victory for the heroes of the opposition movement inside Cuba, but there is still much to be done. The international community must continue to denounce the human rights abuses occurring inside Cuba, the lack of civil liberties and democratic rights, and continue to support the heroic opposition struggling for a free and democratic Cuba inside the island. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
You know, Mr. Speaker, recently we passed a continuing resolution to take care of funding of the government until next March. And one of the things that concerned a lot of us was, is any of that money in that continuing resolution going to go to help the government of Egypt or Libya or any of the other countries where we see all that civil unrest and all the horrible acts of murder taking place? And I never did get an answer. So I would just like to say to my colleagues who are going to be here, I'm retiring at the end of this year, we should not give one dime, not one penny, to any country that tries to undermine the United States interests around the world. And we should not give one penny to anybody that constantly tries to spread radical fundamentalist Muslim beliefs in this world. Sharia law is something we can't live with, and we need to let them know very clearly that if they want to work with the United States, fine, but they're not getting any money from us if this continues. This world is in a terrible shape because of these radicals, and we must not let them win this battle.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair would remind members to refrain from trafficking in the well. For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise?
Permission to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Americans do not want forever permanent wars that last 3 or 4 times longer than World War II. And they especially do not want to spend hundreds of billions on people who hate us or don't at least appreciate what we have done for them. Probably half the spending we have done over the years in Iraq and Afghanistan has been pure foreign aid. And we have poured many, many billions into Egypt, Pakistan, and other countries throughout the Middle East. Our own nation is $16 trillion in debt. We are borrowing all this money to send to countries that are exploding with anti-American rage. 51 American soldiers have been murdered over the past several months by Afghan police and soldiers who they were training. Now we have had our ambassador and 3 other Americans killed in Libya. We should have gotten out of Afghanistan years ago. We need to get out now and not take too long to do it. We need to stop trying to run the whole world, creating so much resentment, and start putting our own country first once again. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Are there any further requests for 1 minute? Being none. The chair lays before the House the following personal request.
Leave of absence requested for Mr. Berman of California for today.
Without objection, the request is granted. The chair will recognize members for special order speeches without prejudice to the possible resumption of legislative business. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Hoyer, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And so, this 112th Congress convulses to an ugly end of its time before the national elections. All of us must be sad, and the American people are angry and sad, that this Congress has been so inattentive to the needs of the American people. Mr. Speaker, today House Republicans are leaving town and will not return until after the November elections. Two very respected political scientists, not Democrats or Republicans, one a representative of a more conservative think tank and another a more liberal think tank, have written a book about the dysfunction they have seen in this Congress. Mr. Mann and Mr. Ornstein, quoted by many reporters from many journals from all different perspectives. They said this: "We have been studying Washington politics in Congress for more than 40 years, and never have we seen them as dysfunctional. In our past writings, we have criticized both parties when we believed it was warranted. Today, however," said these two respected political scientists and observers of Washington, "today, however, we have no choice but to acknowledge that the core of the problem lies with the Republican Party." They went on to say that the GOP has become an insurgent outlier in American politics. It is ideologically extreme, scornful of compromise, unmoved by conventional understanding of facts, evidence, and science, and dismissive of the legitimacy of its political opposition. That is the nub of the problem. Our Republican colleagues are leaving without getting their work done. And I say their work done, without getting our work done, the work of the American people. Comprehensive jobs bills, middle-class tax cuts have not been extended. Farmers are left on their own to face the worst drought in decades. The worst drought in decades. And a farm bill reported out of the Republican committee lays unconsidered by this floor, reported out of their committee from their majority, and they haven't brought it to the floor while farmers remain in trouble. We've not reauthorized the Violence Against Women Act, and we have not passed a postal reform bill. I am glad to take this special order, Mr. Speaker, to say to the American people that we're prepared to stay. We're prepared to stay and work on these bills. And I'm going to talk about some of these bills, but my colleagues are here as well. I first want to yield to the former president of the Senate of Vermont for his observations as we leave this town. My friend, Mr. Welch from Vermont.
I thank the gentleman. You know, on the Farm Bill, we've got the worst drought we've had in 50 years. We've got people who need nutrition programs. We've got farmers who need certainty about what the price support programs are going to be, what their future is going to be. We've got livestock farmers that are in desperate straits because of the drought. And we've got a Senate that's passed a Farm Bill. We've got a House Agriculture Committee that's passed a Farm Bill on a bipartisan basis. Democrats and Republicans working together to pass that bill. And the House leadership, who has the authority to bring this bill to the floor, won't do it. That's the first time in the history of the House of Representatives where a Farm Bill passed by the Agriculture Committee has not been brought to the floor for a vote. And Mr. Speaker, we could defend, each and every one of us on both sides of the aisle, a vote of conscience whether it was yes or no on the Farm Bill. None of us can defend not even taking a vote on the Farm Bill. That decision is not within the authority of any individual member of Congress. That is the decision that the majority leader and the Speaker of the House have the authority to make. And their refusal to bring this bill to the floor will be absolutely an indictment of Congress's inability to do its job. America needs a farm bill. This Congress needs to do its job. We've got the time to do it. We should act. That bill should be brought to us for a vote, and I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, that is an example of the dysfunction and inability and unwillingness to compromise of which Mr. Orenstein and Mr. Mann spoke. I now yield to my friend from New York, Mr. Tonko.
Thank you, Representative Hoyer, Minority Whip Hoyer, who has, you have led us so expertly well on this floor. And, you know, you cite the many failings of this do-nothing Republican Congress. It is tragic that we will leave home now and not get the work of the people done and will not respond to the needs of America. That is such an unjust outcome. We know that a middle-class tax cut has been passed in the Senate. The President said he would sign it. We need that measure. We need that measure done so as to provide for confidence in the American economy. What we need right now is that sort of boost. That booster shot can do a lot for growing sales for businesses out there, the aggregate demand for goods and services driven by relief for the middle class via a tax cut is important. The Violence Against Women Act that was reauthorized in the Senate failed to come to this floor. Postal reform, overwhelmingly approved by the Senate, fails to come to this floor. The Farm Bill, which is important to all of upstate New York. I know our members from the upstate delegation, from the New York delegation, are greatly disturbed by the do-nothing Republican Congress. Representative Hoyer, Minority Whip Hoyer, thank you for leading us in this discussion. We have not earned a 6-week recess until Election Day without having done the people's business. We need to stay here, get the people's work done, build America's economy, go forward with progress, and provide for the results that America so desperately needs. And it's a shame that this do-nothing Republican Congress has now called halt to all business on this floor for the next several weeks.
I thank the gentleman for his comments. He's absolutely right. And just for, Mr. Speaker, the knowledge of all of our members, the Senate did pass a middle-class tax cut, making sure that 98% of our taxpayers would not get any increase in their taxes on the 1st of January. That bill is over here. It has not been brought to the floor. Notwithstanding the fact, I believe every one of us believes that those taxpayers ought not to get an increase. So there's overwhelming support for that bill, bipartisan support, but won't be brought to the floor. On the Violence Against Women Act, to ensure that women and families are not subjected to dangerous domestic violence, it passed 68 to 31 through the United States Senate. Not passed here. Postal reform passed 62 to 37 in a bipartisan vote in the United States Senate. Not paid attention to here. The Farm Bill, which passed with 64 votes, almost 2 to 1 in the United States Senate, on a bipartisan vote with 16 Republican senators voting for it, has not been brought to this floor. And yet, we walk away. We walk away from the American people. I now yield to my friend from Illinois, the gentlelady from Illinois, Jan Schakowsky.
I thank the gentleman so much for yielding and for pointing out how languishing in the House of Representatives are many pieces of legislation that have passed the United States Senate in a bipartisan way with a Democratic majority. But here in the House, where we have a Republican majority, and as you pointed out, some of these bills have actually passed their own committees, led by Republicans, are still not being considered on the floor today. So we're going to adjourn and will not meet again for almost 2 months, the earliest adjournment before an election in over 50 years. Republicans are going to turn off the lights in this chamber, shutting down debate on matters of serious consequence to Americans and the economy. Shame on them. We should be staying and dealing with those bills. They have voted, for example, time after time to repeal Obamacare and protect tax cuts for the wealthy and rich corporations, but have taken no action on preserving tax cuts for the middle class, for 98% of American taxpayers, or taken any action on the Violence Against Women Act, which passed the Senate by a bipartisan vote of 68 to 31, always passing. For the many years that the Violence Against Women Act has been enacted, it's always had bipartisan support. We haven't passed the wind production tax credit, which again would mean jobs for Americans in an industry that has just been developing right now, that's so important to our environment. And for people, for instance, in my state of Illinois and in Iowa and other Midwestern states, we haven't passed the doctor fix, making sure that Medicare reimbursements to doctors don't drop by 27%. We haven't dealt with sequestration, which would have a devastating impact on investments that create jobs and protect low-income people. There's been no action on the post office reform or the Farm Bill, which has been mentioned. But in Illinois, where we have a serious drought in southern Illinois, our farmers are waiting for some drought relief. But they're not going to get it from this Congress. And most importantly, while Republicans have found the time to vote again and again to end the Medicare guarantee, making it harder for seniors to choose their own doctors, and raising the cost of health care for seniors by over $6,000 a year, they still haven't found the time to bring a comprehensive jobs bill to the floor, or one that deals with making it in America, an industrial policy that would actually put Americans back to work right here at home. Millions of hard-working American people are still looking for more than just talk about jobs. Over a year ago, I introduced the Emergency Jobs to Restore the American Dream Act to create more than 2 million jobs and put people back to work in the most straightforward of ways, by hiring them. My bill would put people to work in critical areas to our communities and our economies, like teachers, cops, firefighters, healthcare workers, school construction and maintenance workers. And over a year ago, President Obama sent to Congress the American Jobs Act, which incorporated parts of my bill and also would provide tax credits to small businesses, and yet another tax credit, and assistance to state and local governments to prevent layoffs of critical workers. Independent experts estimate that President Obama's American Jobs Act would create up to 2.6 million jobs. But the Republican do-nothing Congress brought neither of these jobs bills to the floor. No, they are every day sabotaging every effort to actually help create jobs and to make it in America. Democrats truly do want to stay to fight for jobs, for the economy, for farmers, for taxpayers, for battered women. And it's time for the Republicans to join us. Thank you, Mr. Minority Leader, for leading us in this effort, and I urge all of our Republicans to join us in staying here. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished member from Illinois, Ms. Schakowsky, for her comments. Nobody fights harder for working people and seniors in this Congress than Jan Schakowsky. And no one is sadder that we have been so lacking in attention to the issues of concern to those folks. I now want to recognize Allison Schwartz from the state of Pennsylvania, who's also been a great leader, member of the Ways and Means Committee, trying to work on behalf of jobs and growing our economy. I yield to my friend from Pennsylvania.
Well, I thank you, Mr. Hoyer. As a Minority Whip, you've outspoken every week, both on the floor of Congress but around this country, in speaking up on the actions we ought to be taking to be strengthening our nation, protecting our seniors, growing our economy and making sure our children have a great future. And you speak eloquently about that every week. So I really am pleased to be able to just join you in really calling attention to the fact that we do have serious economic and fiscal challenges in this nation. And that instead of coming together, trying to find common ground, trying to find that agreement so we can solve these problems, so the American people are asking us to do, to solve these problems, the Republicans have been doing nothing. They're trying to roll back, move us backward, and in fact the Republicans, as we know, just decided to recess and head home. We know the Republicans, yet again, have made their choices, their priorities, their values very clear, not only to us, but our constituents, but really all Americans are seeing more clearly what the Republicans' choices have been. They are determined to dismantle the progress we have made. They continuously try and roll back what accomplishments we have made, and to take our country back to a failed economic agenda that has hurt so many Americans. Their goals, the Republican goals, are stunning, and we have seen them every week on the floor of Congress for the last year and a half, almost 2 years. Repealing health care reform and eliminating the benefits for seniors and access to affordable coverage for millions of Americans, repealing financial regulatory system, on eliminating those consumer protections, undoing environmental regulations and threatening clean water and clean air, ending Medicare as we know it, reducing the federal government at any cost. That has been their goal. I want to mention just quickly 2 things that I know you're going to talk some more about, and so are my colleagues. On Medicare, I fought so hard on Medicare, we all have. The Republicans have been absolutely clear about this. Their willingness to undo Medicare for all seniors. I mean, I've said this before, but whether you're 65 and expecting Medicare and living under Medicare right now, you will see a reduction in your benefits. Whether you're 55 or 45 or 35 and you're paying into Medicare, want Medicare to be there in the future, they are threatening that promise of Medicare. They are deliberately working and have voted to end Medicare as we know it. We've seen that time and again, and the Republican, not just leadership, not just Mr. Ryan, many, of course most of the Republicans, not all of them, have voted for this. So rather than guaranteed benefits under Medicare, the Republicans will leave seniors on their own to buy benefits that they can afford or not. The voucher will be inadequate to buy Medicare benefits that exist now, costing our seniors about $6,400 more per year. They threaten our frailest seniors as well in nursing homes by voting for a third of a cut in Medicaid that affects really the costs our seniors, our frailest seniors in nursing homes. Any of us who have loved ones or visit nursing homes know that these are people who really require a great deal of care. This is the agenda of the Republicans. And instead of tackling what we're willing to do together, middle-class tax cuts, they're holding hostage to tax breaks for the wealthiest, 1 or 2%. They won't move forward on that sort of certainty. On many of the issues facing us in the end of the year, on that fiscal cliff that many of us talk about, really not doing the kind of work that needs to get done to create that certainty, to be able to protect Medicare, to be able to make those strategic investments, to make sure the tax policy is fair, and we do fiscal policy for our nation in the right way, a fair way, and a responsible way, and an achievable way. So I thank you for this special order, and I'm calling on the Republicans to meet these challenges for our nation and to do that together.
I thank the gentlelady for her comments. No one works harder on health care, is more focused on the delivery of affordable care to all of our people, but particularly concerned about health care for our seniors. And how ironic it is that the pledge that the Republicans made was to repeal and replace. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but there has been no replacement. On the one hand, they want to eliminate the guarantee that Medicare gives to people to have the security that health care will be available to them, and on the other hand, offer nothing to replace it, no alternative except to increase substantially the cost of those seniors in the time of need of health care. So I thank the gentlelady for her work. I thank her for her leadership on this very, very critical issue. Now I'm pleased to yield to the distinguished minority leader, the former Speaker of the House, who has been instrumental in ensuring affordable health care is available to all of our people, Nancy Pelosi of California.
Thank you very
Mr. Hoyer, I appreciate your yielding and your leadership in bringing us together on the floor of the House. We are in after hours, and it is only 12:40, but it's after hours on a Friday afternoon. That is in the context of we left here on August 3rd. We're not due back until November 14th, and yet we have had only 8 legislative days of work in that period of time. I thank you for calling that delinquency of duty, dereliction of duty to the attention of the American people, because we have work to do. It's not as if our work is finished. And as you have indicated, there is critical expiring legislation that is passed even in the Senate, yet Republicans have blocked a vote in the House, whether it's middle-income tax relief, postal reform, violence against women, farm bill, and then, of course, initiatives proposed by President Obama to create jobs for our economy. I wanted to, I was so pleased to hear what our colleague, Congresswoman Schwartz, had to say about Medicare, because really our names are all on the ballot in this year's election, but what is really at stake is Medicare. Medicare, Medicare, Medicare. And as you said, distinguished Hoyer, they've offered nothing except to raise costs to seniors for getting less as they phase out Medicare. I wanted to just talk about another subject, though, because it's a larger issue that I hear this question bandied about. You hear people say, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? The Republicans have the nerve to pose that question, when if you look back to 4 years ago, this very week, Mr. Speaker, you would know that we are indeed fundamentally and unquestionably better off as a country today. This fall, again, no, this week, 4 years ago, September 18th to be exact, but this week, there was a meeting in my office when I was Speaker of the Democratic and Republican leadership of the House and of the Senate, gathered together to hear a report from the administration that was very alarming. Now, mind you, September 18th, 2008, the Secretary of the Treasury, Hank Paulson, described for us a financial system in imminent danger of total collapse. Chairman Bernanke, at that same meeting, the chairman of the Fed, told us if we did not act immediately, we would not have an economy by Monday. This is a Thursday evening. You remember, Mr. Hoyer, you were there. If we do not act immediately, we will not have an economy by Monday. How on earth can people who perpetrated that situation on our country have the nerve to turn around and ask that question? At the end of the meeting, we all went out in a bipartisan way and spoke to the press, and I said at the time, time is of the essence, and then Congress would act, trying to lift the confidence in our financial situation. Despite a presidential election 7 weeks away at that time, it was no time for partisanship. The crisis demanded that Democrats and Republicans work with President Bush to rescue our economy from depression, or, as Chairman Bernanke said, from our not having an economy 4 days later. In the days ahead, our country confronted the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. The costs were staggering: more than $8 trillion lost in household wealth, more than 8 million jobs lost, and more than 4 million families losing their homes to foreclosure. Nonetheless, the Democrats voted with President Bush to restore confidence in our markets, and the Republicans even walked away from their own president. In the 2 years after that September 18th meeting, we continue to take actions to reduce spending, to address what was inevitable from the policies of the 8 years previous to the November 2008 election. We continued with the majority and with President Obama in office. We took action to reduce spending, to create jobs, keep people in their homes, and pass Dodd-Frank, the toughest Wall Street reforms in generations. And with it, the most historic for the first time, protections for American consumers in that bill. All of it fought vigorously against by the Republicans. So now we have President Obama and we have a Republican Congress. Under President Obama's leadership, we have added private sector jobs for 30 straight months compared to losing 700,000 jobs a month as he entered office. The auto industry, which was facing extinction, and the loss of over 1 million jobs in that industry, is again competitive and hiring and thriving. The Dow Jones average, which is one reflection of the security of tens of millions of American investors and pension funds, has already doubled, and housing prices are slowly rising again. We need much more progress there. But imagine from that time, the Dow Jones has doubled. We still have work to do to continue the American recovery. If the Republicans had cooperated at all with President Obama in the last 2 years, would be much farther down the road to recovery. We cooperated with President Bush, but they would not offer an ounce of cooperation to President Obama, and our economy has paid the price. We have reaped the benefits of some of what happened in the 2 years when we were in the majority and President Obama was in the first 2 years of his term. But so much more could have been done with some cooperation from the Republicans. So we get back to the question. Are we better off this week in September than we were this week 4 years ago? Well, you be the judge. I know America's families are hurting. We want to do more to create jobs, et cetera. We have to have bipartisan cooperation to do that. The Republicans have resisted that. So from that standpoint, yeah, we can do better. But from the standpoint of this country being with a state where the financial there was a financial crisis, we were on the verge of a total collapse, where the chairman of the Fed told us if we did not act immediately, we wouldn't have an economy by Monday. Yes, we are fundamentally, as a country, better off, and therefore the prospects for the future are better for all of America's families, and that's what we are here to work on, the future. Too bad our Republican colleagues have cut and run from town. But we stand ready to welcome them back, to work in a bipartisan way, to make concessions, to get the job done for the American people. And I thank you, Mr. Hoyer, for giving us all the opportunity to express our views on this subject here today.
Madam Leader, I thank you for your comments and for your leadership. You are so correct in citing the statistic of the Dow having doubled. Actually, it's up now probably by 105, 110%. The Standard & Poor's is up more than double, and the NASDAQ is up more than double over those years. In January of 2009, I'm sure most people tragically remember, we lost 818,000 private sector jobs that month. Last month, we gained 92,000 jobs. Is there anybody that could say a loss of 818,000 jobs isn't a lot worse than the gain of 92,000 jobs? 92,000 jobs is not enough. We need to do more. The President offered a jobs bill. It has not been brought to this floor. Notwithstanding the fact in the Pledge to America they said this was going to be a transparent Congress that would be allowed to work its will. That bill has not been brought to the floor. For the last 30 months, we have gained straight more jobs, 4.6 million jobs to be exactly correct, over the last 30 months, while 4.4 million jobs were lost in 2008 alone. Are we better off gaining 4.6 as opposed to losing 4.4 million jobs? And we've had 12 straight quarters of economic growth. The last 4 quarters of 2008 in the last administration was a net 13% decrease in GDP. Yes, Mr. Speaker, the leader is correct. We're better off today, but we could be much better off. And we ought to be better off if we hadn't walked away from a jobs bill, hadn't walked away from investing in an infrastructure bill that gave certainty. We didn't even bring that bill to the floor. Walked away from making sure that the health care bill works properly. Walked away, and I'm going to recognize Mr. Costa, walked away from the farmers of America. Walked away this day, as we've walked away in the past, And now I want to yield to my friend, I know that Ms. Woolsey is next. Mr. Costa has a, could he go next just on the farmers? Would that be all right? Sure. And then I'll recognize Ms. Woolsey. I want to recognize Mr. Costa, who's from farm country. He understands the pain that is being experienced in farm country, and he knows how terrible it is to have simply walked away from the House-passed bill out of committee and walked away from a bipartisan Senate bill. And I yield to my friend who is such a strong voice on this floor, such an active member of the Agricultural Committee, and such a proponent of farm country, not only in California, which he represents, but throughout this country. Mr. Costa.
Thank you very much. I thank the gentleman from Maryland for yielding the time, because we ought to be about doing the people's business, and walking away today as we are for the next 46 days to focus on elections when we ought to be focusing on the people's business is a very sad commentary, to the people of our land. I appreciate all the good work that Congressman Hoyer and my other colleagues do in trying to address the critical challenges that we face in our nation today. As was stated, our House Republican colleagues have left town to focus on the election. But in the meantime, we have unfinished business. We have unfinished business on comprehensive jobs, big and balanced budget solutions to the deficit, tax cuts for middle class, the Farm Bill, which I want to speak to, and the Violence Against Women's Reauthorization Act as a co-chair of the Victims of Crime Caucus, especially disheartening. Let me say that folks in America who farm and put the food on America's dinner table are wondering just why we can't get a farm bill. It is one of the most bipartisan things we ever do here in Congress. 2008, we had a bipartisan farm bill. When we had the majority, President Bush vetoed it. We overrode his veto twice. Today, we have a farm bill that passed with overwhelming bipartisan support in the Senate by a vote of 64 to 35. It made cuts because we have to make cuts and we have to be fiscally responsible. $23.5 billion less than the Farm Bill of 2008. In the House, as a member of the House Ag Committee, we voted a comprehensive bill out, 35 to 11. We made cuts because we have to make cuts. In a number of the areas, we made similar cuts as we did as the Senate. In $20 billion in farm programs. We made additional cuts in nutritional programs, which are part of what would normally be worked out if regular order was allowed to take place.
Well, the gentleman yielded on
Yes.
that, and he may know this better than I because he works so closely with the ag community, but over 70 farm organizations and farmer-focused organizations came to town just a week or two weeks ago, and all said, pass the Senate bill. Not because they believed it was perfect, but because it was a bipartisan bill that they believed would bring relief to farm country and give some certainty to the farming community. I think I'm correct on that, and I yield back to my
The gentleman is correct. We had over 70 farm organizations, from the American Farm Bureau to the National Farmers Union to the, as we say, the Barnyard Coalition that represents all of the poultry and pork and dairy and beef cattle industries, because they understand that a farm bill is a safety net. And without it, we don't have a farm policy, we don't have a food policy for not just American farmers, ranchers, and dairymen, but for the consumers who each night enjoy the highest quality food produced with the safest quality anywhere in the world. Let me just close by saying two things. The dairy industry is hurting. We've had a drought in the Midwest that has devastated a whole host of the farm country. And yet, what is one of the ways that farmers, ranchers, and dairymen are able to produce next year's crop? Well, they get loans. They get loans from banks and from production credit associations. What are those loans made of? They're based upon the value of their farm and how much they're leveraged, but they're also based upon a farm bill that provides the ability to ensure that there's a safety net and that there is crop insurance. And without a farm bill, we don't have any crop insurance. Without a farm bill, we don't have that safety net. And so with the overwhelming bipartisan support that we have in the Senate, the bipartisan bill that voted out of the House Ag Committee, it seems to me we ought to let the process work. So I would urge my colleagues to come back and let's do the people's business on all of these issues. The Violence Against Women's Reauthorization Act. The Crime Victims Caucus every day is focusing on protecting women and their families throughout this country. And that is also a tremendous bipartisan piece of legislation that we always act on. Again, we're not doing the people's business. I yield back to my colleague and the gentleman from Maryland who is so correct to bring this to the attention of the House, because, ladies and gentlemen, we ought to be about doing the people's business. I yield the balance of my time.
I thank the gentleman from California for his leadership, not only for farm country, but for all people in this country, on behalf of getting people back to work, making jobs available, and making sure our farmers are secure, and particularly for making sure that we address the epidemic of violence perpetrated against family members. I thank the gentleman for his leadership. And now I want to yield to somebody who is as strong a voice as we have in this House on behalf of working men and women in this country, Lynn Woolsey from the state of California.
I thank the gentleman for yielding and for leading this special order. Mr. Speaker, yesterday we were debating work requirements under the TANF program. Well, after we've all listed the issues that the Republicans have refused to address in this Congress, we can say that we know a bunch of people who should be subjected to a work requirement. They take home a lot of federal dollars. They're actually on the public dole, but they don't seem to be doing very much work. And I'm talking about the do-nothing Republicans in this Congress. I don't blame them for wanting to hurry home for their campaigns, because a lot of their jobs must be in jeopardy. On the other hand, when they get there, they might find their constituents pretty frustrated that they haven't done their jobs and they have not met their responsibilities. Every single day that we're here, my colleagues across the aisle put forward bills that have no hope of becoming law and exist only to promote Republican talking points. Time and time again, they've chosen gridlock and confrontation over progress and cooperation. They haven't lifted a finger to pass the President's job package, even though it contains many, many ideas that the Republicans supported in the past. They want to destroy health care reform instead of building on it. They've refused to work with Democrats on education issues, failing to invest in our children who are 100% of our future. They haven't done a thing to support the middle class and give them hope for the future. It's no wonder the Congress has record-low approval ratings. But, Mr. Speaker, most disappointing of all to me is the Republican Congress's failure to lead on an issue of national security, war and peace. While we're on recess, the war in Afghanistan will turn 11 years. 11 years and more. More than 2,000 Americans are dead. Thousands more are wounded. The taxpayers are out more than $500 billion. All for a policy that continues to undermine our national security goals instead of advancing them. Well, our brave service members who are putting life or limb on the line in Afghanistan don't get a recess. When we adjourn, they will continue to be very much in session. Their district work period is in districts in Afghanistan where the Taliban is poised to strike, some at the most dangerous places imaginable. The war isn't just morally reprehensible, it's fiscally irresponsible, and the very same members who want to cut every domestic program to the bone have barely blinked an eye when it comes to billions and billions of dollars in misplaced war appropriations. When is the Congress going to catch up with the American people? Certainly not between now and the election, because we've gone home. The people we work for know that it makes no sense to continue military occupation that is doing more harm than good, creating more terrorists than it's defeating, making us less safe, not more. The American people have made it abundantly clear. They want us to be here. They want us to be debating this war. They're done with this war. They want us to vote to bring our troops home safely. The country faces huge challenges. Our people are crying out for leadership, and the majority wants to turn out the lights. And actually, they've gone home. Americans desperately want the Congress to do something to create jobs and jumpstart the economy, something to create peace and security. But the Congress, the Republicans in Congress have gone home. They've left the work site. They're gone. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady for her comments, and I yield to my friend Suzanne Bonamici, who is such an effective state legislator, was overwhelmingly elected in a special election, and every day since that election has been working hard on behalf of hard-working men and women, not only in Oregon but throughout this country. And I know she's disappointed that we're walking away from our responsibilities, and I yield to my friend.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hoyer, for bringing to the country's attention the work left undone. Now, when I arrived in Congress just a little more than 7 months ago, I brought a pretty strong message from my constituents back in Oregon, and that's that they want us to overcome the gridlock. They want us to get our economy back on track and support policies that create new jobs. Of course, no one expects this to be an easy task, but I was really encouraged by so many people who said, that's why we're here, let's work together for job creation. And unfortunately, these conversations have now been kicked down the road for another day, well, actually another month, while too many of our constituents back home are now facing unemployment, their homes are underwater, their child care costs are rising. Now, several of the colleagues have talked about the failure to pass the Farm Bill. This typically bipartisan legislation became a staging ground for a fight over nutrition assistance to people who are struggling. Now, that bipartisan Senate bill has some amendments that were added that will help farmers in my district and across this country. We should be able to vote on that bipartisan bill that passed the Senate. And as others have mentioned, we're going to go back to our districts and face our constituents who are expecting so much from us. But we did not extend the production tax credit for wind energy. Now, that's a problem in my district. I have companies that are waiting for that. They may now be facing additional layoffs. That policy has long been a bipartisan policy supported by many to develop the wind industry in this country. That's going to be hard for us to explain to our constituents. So, Mr. Hoyer, thank you. There's so much that we can do and should be doing to get our economy back on track, but Congress is not doing our job. This failure to pass bipartisan common sense legislation is something everyone in America should know about. We should be staying here representing the best interests of our constituents, helping to put this country back to work. So thank you again, Mr. Hoyer, for yielding and for bringing this important issue to everyone's attention.
I thank the gentlelady for her comments. Now I want to recognize a distinguished gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Carnahan, who's been such